joining us for this sermon podcast from United Christian Church of Austin, where no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you're invited and welcome. This sermon for Sunday, May 6th is one of our Instant Sermon Sundays, when the pastors set aside a written sermon and instead respond to questions in the moment from the congregation. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to learn more about our open and affirming ministries at United Christian Church, simply head over to our website, www.uccaustin.org. Thank you. Want to pick one for me?
After experiencing how important hospital care is, why do we not have a policy, procedure, or anything in place to minister to those?
Hospital care or hospice care? Just curious.
Hospital.
Okay. So that is certainly one of those crisis moments in life, right? How many of you have ever yourself been in a hospital? Now keep your hands up. How many have ever had a loved one who was in the hospital? How many of you have ever visited someone in the hospital? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. This is just part of what it is to be human, right? We have these bodies and these minds that are faulty and frail. And we experience those edges in our lives when things begin to crack a bit. And certainly as we grow older, if we are so fortunate. This is something that happens to almost all of us. In terms of a policy or procedure, no, we don't have a policy, and I'm not sure what hospital policy would look like, but we certainly have procedures. In fact, we have at least 3 procedures in the room this morning. Me and Nikki and Carl, among others, and certainly there are folks among you who have the gift of being able to visit in the hospital. That is a challenging thing to do. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I sort of feel like the fastest speed of any land animal is a human being on the way out of a hospital visit. That's an uncomfortable place to be. It's uncomfortable for folks who are there and need to be, and it's uncomfortable for us when we go and visit. It reminds us of our mortality in that moment. But it is important to make those connections, to reaffirm those connections, even if it is just in passing, even if it is. Sometimes I go and visit folks in the hospital and they're asleep, and I don't wake them up. Sleep is the most important thing anybody could be doing in the hospital. And so I just write a note and say that I was there and make a time to go back. But this is certainly something that we do as your clergy, as your pastoral staff, is to we try and keep tabs on who's there. One of the biggest challenges is you letting us know that you're there. Unfortunately, you have not called 3 psychic pastors. So we do not know if you're in the hospital unless you or someone close to you tells us. And sharing that information is challenging because I'm not going to ask for hands, but I wonder if there's anyone in the room who, if you were in the hospital, you wouldn't want a visit. I'll tell the story of my mother. My mother has sworn that she never, ever, ever wants to visit in the hospital, a card or a call. But sometimes people can be embarrassed to be in the hospital. Sometimes it's just kind of messy. We're fine with that, but it's not our decision to make. We're not going to parachute in on you if you don't want to visit. But if you will let us know, let your elder know, let someone know, and make sure they know that you're letting them do that. One of the biggest things that we talk about as we gather every week, we gather as pastoral staff and go over pastoral concerns in the congregation, including who's in the hospital, where folks are. And we do that confidentially because that's important confidential information. It's not secret, very secret information, but that is personal information. And so there's some limits on how we can share that. So if you ever know of someone who's in the hospital and you go and you speak to them, ask them, would you like me to contact the church on your behalf so someone can come and visit from the church? If you don't tell us that that person wants us to come, that's a boundary that's hard for us to cross. We want to be respectful, even as we are caring. Nikki certainly has done a lion's share of this over the years, and now Carl as well. But I don't know if you wanted to add.
No, I just want to add that this is a really important piece of social work, and most of you know that I have a social work degree as well as a seminary degree. And the important piece in that is called self-determination. So you as an individual have the right to decide what kind of care you want. And I echo that we are not going to assume that if you're in the hospital, we're not going to make the assumption that you want us to show up. I've done that way too many times, and it's very uncomfortable. And sometimes people get angry about that we are crossing a border, that we are, it can be a detriment to a relationship. And one of the things that we're called to do in pastoral care is to forge relationships and then maintain those relationships. And we don't want to do anything that is going to jeopardize that relationship. Now, sometimes we step on each other's toes. I mean, that happens, right? Two people are getting together and having relationships, we step on each other's toes. But when it's in a crisis mode, we're extra sensitive about it. So you get to determine whether or not you want to visit. But that puts on you a little bit to call. Some people have told me ahead of time, anytime I'm in the hospital, from here until the day I die, just come. That's fine. We know who those individuals are. And if you are one of those and you let us know and you are in the hospital, we will assume that you want us to be there. But we don't ever want to take that self-determination away from you. And then I will add, Carl has been called to specifically work on, his focus is on, right now, is on our hospital and homebound members. So he is taking an active role, and maybe he might call up and say, do you want to visit? And if you want to say no, that is fine. You're not going to hurt our feelings at all.
Along those lines, you're not going to hurt our feelings. If you want to visit from a particular pastor, again, don't assume that we know that. If you have a relationship with one of us or you want to, please reach out and ask that. We are not going to be offended. We are a team. That's one of the great blessings of being in ministry together. We're a team doing all of this. So just in fact, last week, someone called with a need for a hospital visitation. It was on a Saturday, and so we were in immediate email contact, text contact, and who was free and who could go, and we made sure. We also made sure that just one of us would go, and not all three of us would go.
We're circling your...
Well, for everybody in that situation. So thank you for asking that question. That's an important part. And that's also not just our ministry. This is our ministry together. You are the first line in pastoral care for folks in the congregation. We are working in this all together. All right, ready?
No.
I just saw a question about fire ants. Do you want to? Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people, and I think especially it says, and to good kids?
Oh, that's a hard one, isn't it? And it's not a new question. It's a question that we've been asking, that humanity has been asking for many, many, many years. In fact, if we were to open our Bible right now and to go back to the Old Testament and kind of read the stories of why bad things happen to good people, or let's reverse it, why do good things happen to, whatever, both ways, right? So in the Old Testament, there was a community understanding that group of people live by. And we don't necessarily live by that understanding today. And the reality is that the world that we live in is just not very pretty. And there are hardships that are outside of our control and outside of our control. And it's a hard question to answer, too, because it also kind of depends on how you view God. And I know I've brought this up before, and I will probably continue to bring it up, but there's a really good book out there called The Four Gods. And it was based on a research study that was done out of Baylor University and surveying a whole bunch of people and asking them questions about how they view God. Do they view God as someone, as God, as a distant God, that just kind of put the world in motion and stands back there and doesn't do anything? Or do they view God as someone who is very intimate in the world, right? Also, do they view God as a judger, or more of someone who, a God that is very grace-filled? And they took those answers and they put them in a quadrant, right? And depending on what quadrant you were in, kind of was the way that you view God. So for those who view God as very active in the world, very, not the distant God, but very active in the world, this question is particularly challenging. Because if God is so active in the world, then why would God allow such things to happen, and especially to those who are innocent? And I say children, I also would extend that to those in our society that are very vulnerable. So those who are mentally and physically disabled, those kind of vulnerability things. Now, someone who views God as a very distant God, right, who's not very active in the world, question is still a little challenging, but it's a little easier to answer because it's like God set the world in motion, so yeah, it's just supposed to happen, right? God really isn't controlling the pieces of it. So I don't have an answer for you. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Responding to questions.
But I do know that in addition to how we view God over time changes. And I know personally in my life, there are times that I really feel that God's like right there guide in each step, right? And there's other times I feel that God is very distant and is just allowing things to be. And sometimes when life is really particularly hard, when you know a child who needs a lung and liver transplant probably isn't going to get it. It's really hard to think, why would God allow that to happen to such a good person? And even though I don't know the answer to exactly why that happens in the world, I do believe that God is with us, that God is with that child that is suffering, that God is with the parents who are going through this ordeal, for the family and friends. And I do believe that no matter where you look in the Bible is a testament that God is truth, and that God is spirit, and that God is love. So even though we can't answer that question, I hold fast to the belief that no matter what we are enduring or not enduring, that God is alongside us. You have nothing to add? You put all of that on me?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Religious right, progressive left. We both call ourselves Christian. How do we reconcile our radically different versions of Christianity?
Okay. Just that.
I'll go sit down now.
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add.
I know it's interesting. It was here on Friday. Church Women United, which is a national organization of women who belong to all kinds of various Christian churches. Carol Kolsky is a longtime leader in that organization, and we were glad to host them here on Friday. And we did. We had women coming from all kinds of different traditions who were also interested to know who we are, and we had some conversation around that. And I was talking to an older African-American woman who was a member of a Catholic church over on the east side of Austin, and she was interested to know who we were and how and what we believe. And she said, she came to that conclusion. We have a lot more in common than we do different, which is absolutely true. Now, the corollary to that is there are no fights like family fights, right? Sometimes it is easier to get along with your neighbor than it is to get along with your siblings. Sometimes it feels like your parents like your spouse better than they like you at times. And I think that's at the heart of this question is these fights among Christian traditions and Christian denominations and strands of Christian faith, at the heart they're really family fights. And they go back a very, very long way. In fact, that's the reason for most of the epistles that were written and are part of our New Testament canon now is there were fights happening in churches. And Paul and others wanted to address some of the issues that came up. So I think at the heart of it, there's a lot of that going on. And the kind of things that we have to do to be together with other Christians who believe very different from us are the kind of things that we have to do when we have to sit down at the Thanksgiving table with in-laws and relatives and siblings who are very different from us. Part of it is holding fast to the idea that we are all, and I think this is increasingly hard in our increasingly polarized culture. One of the things that I have chosen in my life not to do is to never say that somebody is not Christian. You find that more and more people calling out folks on the right and the left saying, well, they're not really Christian. Well, as an openly gay pastor, as an openly gay Christian, I have been called not Christian, despite my best efforts to follow in the footsteps of Jesus and to live out God's love in that way. I know what that feels like, and I know how wrong that person was who said I was not Christian, and I don't want to be that person. I think we are, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I want to believe that they are trying to follow in the footsteps of Jesus and in the faith tradition in which they were raised to the best of their ability. And I have no problems lifting up places where we have differences. I have no problems challenging someone. And in particular, I think there's a lot of stuff that we can let go that we've been told. I mean, we're doing this in such a tiny way in our worship when we come to the time for the Lord's Prayer, and we ask you to use whichever words are closest to your own hearts, and we'll pray together. And some people are sins, and some people are debtors, and some people are trespasses. And I don't know if you know this, but in the past, people have fought wars and died over that language. So we have moved a bit. We have moved the needle a bit. And there are lots of things that are not essential, but that are meaningful for us. And I have to trust that there are things that are not essential that are meaningful to you in your faith, but are not necessarily meaningful for me. Where I draw the line myself and where I'm going to put up the stiffest challenge is when my humanity, my right to exist and determine my life for myself or yours, is threatened by what someone believes. I believe that it's okay to confront someone with a belief like that. I believe that love is a lot stronger than a Hallmark card, and it encompasses that part of love as well. And I believe it's okay to say, you know what, I'm going to stay in relationship with you in the spirit, but I don't have to be in the same room with you. I say this almost every time. I am so glad that Jesus calls us to love everyone, because if the commandment was like everyone, I could not do that. And love is deeper and more different than that. Love includes challenging in places where we need to be challenged. And I hope and expect to be challenged myself. And those places where I feel like I've grown have been places where people didn't just wake up and suddenly I had a great revelation about God. Most of that has come from being challenged by you or other folks and having to reassess in the light of that.
I am thinking about this in very practical terms, because I know that when I drop my children off at their elementary school, that there are a lot of people, a lot of parents that don't believe like I believe. They might be considered more conservative or less liberal or lots of different things, different ideas about what it means to be in relationship with our Muslim community and other religions. And, you posted, maybe the last few days, there was a poster that was posted about how to get along with people that are different religious faiths. Was that what it was?
Yep.
Okay.
You want to keep talking about that?
And there were several things on there, such as, to actually inquire, to find out information, to do a lot more listening than you do talking. One of my favorites was to hold each other's babies, right? And so I think about that in the context of my children and in the parents that I interact with. And I feel like on a practical level, my job in that is to be in relationship to the best of my ability, knowing that we have a common goal of our children being educated in this place, and to do more listening, and to love their children, and to live by example, and to really listen to those things that concern them and why. And so it just struck me that even though that poster is about other religions, how we can apply that even within our own Christian denomination.
Even within this room. Because if you think everyone in this room believes the same way you do? Nope. We are that United Christian Church. We bring a whole lot of stuff with us in this place. And part of the, I think when rifts happen, it's in some ways it's because we assume that everyone does. I know I have run smack dab into that and been corrected. This is the graphic. It says how to respect other religions. Educate yourself. Be amazed or even converted into a better version of yourself. Be patient. Don't form opinions too soon. Build relationships. Keep your sense of humor handy. Ask questions. Listen. Say, I don't understand yet. Experience how others worship. Honor convictions. Don't try to remake people in your own image. Eat together, play together, and hold each other's babies. Embrace mystery. And do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I would add the 13th is remember to love yourself in that process. I think all of those things taken together. Two more. Yep, here it is.
Fire ants?
Why did God make sugars that bite us and fire ants?
He fished for that one, didn't you? Oh, I don't know.
There we go.
I know both of them I despise, but I don't know. Maybe it's kind of like that movie. What's that movie? Marion, what's that movie with the mosquito? Why are there mosquitoes? Because I would add mosquitoes to that list.
Yes, absolutely.
What was the movie with the Stitch? Stitch? Is that the movie? Lilo and Stitch, right? And the aliens, right? And they wanted to destroy Earth. And they said, no, we can't destroy Earth. Right? Because there is an animal that is going to be extinct, and so we moved all of them there, and it was the mosquitoes. And the whole reason why Earth exists was so the mosquitoes don't die out. Right? Right? Exactly. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, you can say I don't understand yet.
I don't understand yet why there are chiggers and fire ants, other than it makes me mow my yard. To keep my yard clean?
And I'm not going to ask if there's anybody who does. I did hear somebody say the other day that if it wasn't for fire ants, they would have no dirt in their yard. I would say whenever we run up against something like this, this is a good time to step back and breathe for like a generation or so, because our history is filled with, you know what, we don't like that thing, and we can't see a purpose for that thing, and so we're going to destroy that thing, and then later we find out what it was there for. Or we bring in, there's a great Simpsons episode where they've got snakes, and they bring in all of these animals to kill the snakes. They bring in one thing, and then they've got to bring in something else to kill that thing, and then something else to kill that thing, until the town is filled with nothing but tigers and gorillas. And I said, this is an ecological stewardship question as well. Is how do we get along with other things? And fire ants are only here because of us. They're only here because of us. Because we imported things and brought them along with us. So before we go, blaming fire ants for all of this, they were probably fine terrorizing some other part of the world if we brought them here. All right, you want more?
How do you forgive someone who has treated your children badly?
Oh, that is so, at first I was like, I thought, this is going to be standard ballpark Christianity. How do we forgive someone who's hurt us? That is an entirely different question when somebody hurts your children or your family, your loved ones. That's, whew. I want to kind of reference the point we made earlier about loving yourself and taking care of yourself and your own stuff, including those people that you love. That is not anti-Christian. Nikki has said this several times. You got to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help other people. God gives us these, constellations of relationships. It's not a bad thing that we love those people who are close to us and that we care for them most in our lives. But boy, that crosses a line, doesn't it? I remember my mom. My mom is the sweetest, most gentle person. But ooh, when the mama bear comes out, or the papa bear comes out, or the sibling, the big brother, or the little sister comes out, that's in a tough place. But it does fall into the general category of how do we forgive, which is at the heart of our faith. I've told this story before. I got asked to preach at a 7 Last Words of Jesus worship service for Good Friday one time. It's where we take all the last words of Jesus from the cross and put them together in a way that doesn't have any integrity with the Bible story as it unfolds. But one of those things is Jesus from the cross saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I mean, just the ultimate forgiveness thing, except it just feels a little more complicated to me. And I stood up and I said, I think maybe that Jesus is up there on the cross and knows that forgiveness is what God wants. And I want to make a clear separation here between forgiving and forgetting. I believe in forgiving. I'm not so big on forgetting. Forgetting is how we learn to set appropriate and healthy boundaries. I mean, remembering those things is how we set appropriate and healthy boundaries with one another. But forgiving is different. And forgiving starts with, you did something so bad that you need my forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a passive thing. It's not a weak thing. In fact, it has to start from that very strong place. You did something that needs my forgiveness. And then you move into explaining that and beginning to heal that. So Jesus is on the cross and looks down and says, people who put him there, and he says, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And I wondered aloud whether Jesus knew that forgiveness is where God wanted him to go, but he was having a little difficulty doing it in the moment. And this, after all, the crucifixion is Jesus at his very most human in that place. But he knew that it was where God wanted him to go, and so in that moment, he calls on God. Notice he doesn't say, I forgive you, for you know not what you do. He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And the silent prayer that follows is, and I hope that I can grow into that forgiveness as well. It's not an instantaneous thing, and when it happens to your kids, I know that's really responding and not answering. But I want to affirm you, whoever asked and whoever else has had this question, that this is one of the very hardest things that we're called to do. I can forgive somebody who has no real relationship to me, who hasn't necessarily hurt me directly. I can come up with all sorts of excuses. But when someone has hurt me and those I love most directly, there's a lot to let go of to get to a place of forgiveness there. And that's not an instantaneous thing, and that's going to take time.
Yeah, along that imagery of putting on the oxygen mask first, how many of you saw the video of the plane that had to make that emergency landing in Pittsburgh and how they were wearing their oxygen masks, right? Not one of them was wearing it correctly, right? Over the nose, over the mouth, pull the strings, right? And I think that's important because when we put our own oxygen mask on ourselves, we need to learn how to forgive ourselves, and that's a big piece of that. Right? And if we can learn to forgive ourselves and also to accept the forgiveness that other people are extending to us, you go a long way into your practice of being able to forgive others. And I also agree that it's not an instantaneous event. Sometimes it's like, oh, I forgive you, it's done and over. Sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it's a process that we take until the day we die. And it is okay to say, I haven't forgiven you yet, but I'm working on it, right? Being an active thing. It's not a passive, just a phrase that we say out there. I'm actively working on that, right? And that is okay too. And you don't need to feel guilty because you haven't forgiven the person, because the Bible says to forgive. I'm working on it. I'm going to take the next best step right today. And what's my next best step? And my next best step. So I encourage you, for those of you who are in that process, that it's okay wherever you are. Just keep making that next best step.
And I want to add on to the add-on just a little bit to say that forgiveness is about you and what you need to do. Reconciliation happens between people. But forgiveness, because what happens if the person that who needs forgiveness from you, what if they die? What if they never, ever understand what they did? What if they never ask for forgiveness? Am I just left with all that pain and that miserable feeling? There's a great phrase I know from the 12-step community. It says, resentment is the poison that you take and hope the other person dies. Right? And if you think you need that other person's approval to enter into that process of forgiving, you may be stuck there for a while. Reconciliation is the healing of that relationship, and that forms a scar and moves on. But forgiveness is also about doing something for you so that you're not carrying that. Maybe Jesus is up there asking God to forgive on his behalf, so he doesn't have to carry that with him and have that be the very last thing that happens in his life. Thank you all so much for your questions this morning and for being part of this instant sermon process.